Hi everyone, Daljeet Peterson here from astrolab21.com, and welcome to our continuing series, Blueprint of the Soul, where we're learning to become the architects of our own destiny by learning to read our astrological birth chart. And here we are, we're 4 episodes in already, and I think we're really starting to gain some traction. And at this point, just want to let you know, this is an ongoing series of videos. So if you haven't watched the first 3 episodes, I highly recommend going back and reviewing those first and getting caught up, because we are really building on that foundation and that framework, and we're adding these pieces so that we can get a really profound and comprehensive understanding of this language of astrology that we're learning to speak here. So description below has links to the playlist. I'm aggregating all of these in one playlist, so they'll be in sequential order. It'll be a great reference for us going forward, where we can just in one place go and see this whole series as it unfolds. So if you haven't already, jump back, watch those, and then come back to this one as we keep going and diving deeper into this curriculum really that we're creating. So, but I do want to review where we've come to this point, because it's helpful to keep sort of circling back to these earlier concepts and principles, because, you know, we're building upon them. And that's really how you learn things, right? You kind of introduce a topic and it kind of settles in, and then we cycle and add to it and then keep building. So I'm going to review where we've come to this far, and what the really most important things that we've discussed in the first 3 episodes, and that'll set us up for where we're going to continue on with this episode. So the foundation of this entire series is that there are really 5 fundamental principles in astrology. I call them the Big 5. And those are the elements, the signs, the houses, the planets, and the aspects. And we started by taking what we call an energy approach to astrology. We're working on this assumption and theory that's really well founded, that really everything in the universe, in our lives, we are all just energy. We're patterns of energy that are vibrating at different frequencies. And essentially, how we use our energy greatly will determine how we experience our lives. And we're going to use astrology as a way of understanding our energy and how we experience life. So what we did was we took each of these 5 principles and we sort of reduced them down to a single keyword using this energy approach, right? And we said that the elements are the very energy substance of our experience, whereas the signs are going to represent the qualities of our experience. The houses are fields of experience. The planets are the functions of experience. And the aspects are the dynamics of experience. And we started in episode 2 with the first of these 5 principles. We explored the elements, these 4 metaphysical elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And we discussed how everything in manifest creation is said to exist as some manifestation, some combination of these 4 essential archetypal elements. Everything exists as a combination of these sort of metaphysical archetypal containers, right? And when we talked about elements, we said how the concept of polarity was intimately connected to the elements. And this is the concept, that, we are living in a world of polarity or duality, right? The law of polarity is a natural law. As we look throughout the universe, we see this concept of polarity. There are 2 sides to every pole, right? Here we have it represented as masculine or feminine, yang or yin, active or passive. We could talk about day and night, or sun and moon, or good and evil, right? Those are all polar opposites. But what we turn to is this beautifully elegant symbol of the yin-yang that we get from the Taoist tradition of ancient China, which shows us that whenever we're thinking of polarities, yes, they are polar opposites, but they are intimately connected. You cannot have one without the other. Masculine can't exist without the concept of feminine, right? You can't be active if there's no notion of being passive. These 2 poles are intimately related. So we want to start to think of polarities in this way. And we demonstrated how polarities are intimately connected with the elements in that we have two complementary pairs. The fire and air elements represent the masculine or yang side of polarity, while the earth and water represent the feminine or yin essence of the polarity. And then we introduced our third important concept, which is the modalities, these modes, these vibes, if you will, right? We talked about how these are three distinct vibrational patterns through which the elements express themselves. So each element can either vibe in a cardinal way, a fixed way, or a mutable way. And we created these symbols to represent how this energy vibration works in each of these modes. Because the cardinal is energy that moves outward from its center in this centrifugal way. The fixed mode is energy that moves inward towards the center in a consolidating fashion, which we would display as a centripetal force. And how the mutable energy is more of like a spiraling energy. It wants to distribute, it wants to mutate, it wants to evolve and change. So these are really our fundamentals, the two polarities, the three modalities, and the four elements, right? And this is really the fundamental building blocks of the very zodiac itself. And if we can learn to understand how these concepts are operating within the zodiac, we have a very powerful and comprehensive and intuitive sense of the zodiac. So in episode 3, we started to build the wheel of the zodiac for the first time. We explained how you orient the wheel of the zodiac in a specific way. It starts at the 9 o'clock position here to the left, and it works its way counterclockwise around a circle. This is the way the wheel of the zodiac works, and we divide that circle into 12 equal parts, and we assign each of the 12 signs of the zodiac to one of those 12 parts. And that gives us the wheel of the zodiac. And that's what we see here with the 12 signs, working from Aries, the first sign, all the way around to Pisces, the 12th sign, and back again in this continual wheel of life. And then we put our principles to practice here by displaying first how the elements play a role in how the signs are configured, right? And we showed how the four elements, fire, earth, air, and water, repeat in a pattern around the wheel so that we get 3 sets of the 4 elements each, which will give us 3 fire signs, 3 earth signs, 3 air signs, and 3 water signs, respectively. And because we demonstrated how each of the elements has a particular polarity associated, that the fire element always represents the masculine or yang pole, earth is always going to be feminine or yin, air will always be masculine, yang, and water, feminine, yin. Well, we are able to now assign a polarity cycle to the wheel of the zodiac, this alternating current. Every other sign is masculine, feminine, yin, and yang. And then we added our third component, which is that of the modalities. And here we see another very interesting repeating pattern, right? We get the 3 modes, starting with Aries, the first sign, cardinal, and then fixed and mutable. And again, this pattern of 3 modes repeats 4 times around the zodiac. And we said how this really encodes the seasonal cycle of our annual year, our solar year, because the first 3 signs are the signs of spring, right? These are the 3 months of spring. These are the 3 months of summer, 3 months of fall, and 3 months of winter, and back into spring again. And so what's being encoded in our wheel of the zodiac is the wheel of life, the wheel of the seasons, right? Really, really powerful metaphor for us to understand the world we live in and to understand how we fit into that world. Now, what we want to start doing is seeing how these factors, these components are sort of the building blocks of the very zodiac itself. They are the underlying framework. They're sort of the basic building blocks or the scaffolding upon which this wheel of the zodiac is erected. So what we want to try to do is to start to see those as invisible, so that when we take away those symbols and those concepts, we still see them. when we look at Aries as a sign, as a symbol, we see fire, we see cardinal, we see yang essence, right? Those are encoded deeply into each of these signs. So as we're learning to speak this richly symbolic language, we're absorbing these other symbols and other concepts as the sort of, as we keep saying, the under the hood of what the zodiac really is. And then in the last episode, we sort of broke away from the wheel for a minute and went to this table form, right? And we showed here this table of elements, which is a lot more fun than the periodic table of elements we learned in chemistry class, right? These are the metaphysical elements, the 4 elements of fire, earth, air, and water. And we can take those 4 elements and see how each of the 3 signs of the zodiac are, there's 3 fire, 3 earth, 3 air, and 3 water signs respectively. And then we also showed, well, we can also arrange these as in terms of their mode and get a 4x3 grid, right? Because there are 4 cardinal signs, there are 4 fixed signs, and we have 4 mutable signs. And by arranging the table in this way, well, we're maintaining the integrity of the elements here in the vertical column, and we have the modalities reading horizontally. And this reveals what I think is a really powerful understanding of how these 12 signs of the zodiac are constructed and how they operate, right? Because we showed how, while we can have 4 cardinal signs and we can have 3 fire signs, only one sign can be both cardinal and fire, which is Aries. Likewise, we can have 4 fixed signs and we can have 3 earth signs. Only one can be fixed and earth. This is Taurus. Again, 4 mutable signs, 3 air signs, only one can be mutable air, which is Gemini. So each of the 12 signs of the zodiac represents one unique combination of these 2 very important factors, the element and the mode, which gives each sign its unique character. So this is, again, we're getting this under the hood appreciation of the zodiac. Each of the elements can express itself in one of 3 vibrational patterns or modes. And when we consider these 4 elements 3 different ways, 4 times 3 is 12. 12 signs of the zodiac. So what we're getting is this under the hood appreciation, right? And so we can see that each of the 4 elements expresses itself in 3 of the signs respectively. So that gets us caught up on what we've done so far, and that's what we're going to start to explore in this next group of 4 episodes. We're going to look at each of the 4 elemental groups of signs, and this will, of course, taking this elemental approach that we've been sort of preaching here in this course, in this series, because this will show us how each of these signs share in their elemental compatibility, and also what distinguishes each of those elemental signs by virtue of the mode that they represent. So here we go. Episode 4 is going to investigate the fire trinity. All right, so we've already covered a lot of ground. We're getting a sense of the elements and the signs. We know how these signs are constructed, this wheel of the zodiac, and we have this elemental approach. So in this episode, we'll discuss and explore the first of the 4 elemental group of zodiac signs. We're going to examine the fire trinity, okay? So if we look here, we see that the fire trinity is composed of the 3 signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, collectively known as the fire trinity. And why do we use the word trinity? Well, obviously there are 3 signs, but there's also something more profound that's going on in this trine or trinity aspect, right? If we go back to our wheel of the zodiac that we built in the last episode, and if we break them out in terms of these 3 signs, right? We know that these are representing of 12 signs of the zodiac, and what we're looking here at the first, the fifth, and the ninth signs, which is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And when we look at this graphically, we start to see this very interesting, triangular color pattern emerge in terms of how these signs are related as they work their way around the zodiac. They're literally 4 signs apart each, which means that they're 120 degrees apart in terms of the 360 degrees of the wheel of the zodiac, which 120 degrees is actually a trine aspect. And if we demonstrate it in this way, we see that they form this perfect equilateral triangle, right? And what we're getting here is a sense of one of the 5 principles that we're going to discuss in an upcoming episode, which is the concept of the aspects. Any elemental group of signs will always be in this harmonious trine relationship. So we're learning about aspects already because we're learning about the signs in an elemental way. So again, just setting the table for upcoming concepts, but showing you that we're already getting some value out of this elemental approach to the signs here. So this is why we're referring to this as the fire trinity, this beautiful geometric pattern that they form in our wheel of the zodiac. And of course, we could go around the zodiac wheel and we could see how the next group is an earth trine, starting with Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn. And then you have an air trine, starting with Gemini here, Libra and Aquarius, and the water trine, which is Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And then it repeats again. So we're getting, again, very fundamental appreciation of this very elegant wheel of the zodiac that has so many of these components to it. But when we can take this really elemental approach, we get a much more intuitive sense of what's going on here. And we start to see this entire wheel in a new and interesting way. So let's dive into this fire trinity and what's going on with the fire signs of the zodiac. And what they all have in common is they all partake of the fire element. So if we go back to what we talked about in episode 2, when we talked about the 4 elements and we explored fire as an element and we created this word cloud, this constellation of qualities that fire represents. And of course, we see the 3 signs, the 3 fire signs are sitting in here in this constellation. We're going to see what all 3 of these signs, the properties of fire, which they are all going to demonstrate, right? They're all going to have this sense of enthusiasm, of inspiration, of excitement, of spontaneity, right? They're all going to be of the intuition mode, right? In the Jungian model of the 4 personality types, they're intuitive, which is that spiritual, the spirituality, right? They have this special destiny that they all feel they possess and have to accomplish, right? Also very fire-like, right? Warmth, illumination, right? It's radiant energy. It's very positive. It's focused on enlightenment and passion. These are all qualities we associate with the fire element. And we saw, it also has a downside. It can be impatient and a little impulsive and direct and harsh and a little crass and crude sometimes because it lacks patience. It has such an enthusiasm. It can just bowl you over sometimes, this fire element. So all 3 of these signs are going to possess this fire-like character. We're going to see these qualities expressed in these 3 signs. But what we want to now see is how each of the signs expresses that fire energy in 3 different ways. And this is where the modes come in, right? So let's start with the first sign, Aries. And what distinguishes Aries as a fire sign is that it is a certain kind of fire. It is cardinal fire, right? It is energy that moves in a very definite direction. It is primary. It is important, right? It is action in a definite direction. It initiates, right? This is that concept of centrifugal force. This is energy that wants to move out from the center in any direction, outward focused, very expressive. So when we combine the cardinal mode with the fire element, and of course we know that every fire element is also yang, we start to get this very particular way that Aries, the qualities of Aries start to present themselves. This is a very particular kind of fire energy. This is cardinal fire. I think of Aries energy as like a flamethrower. It is just, right, one direction. What we want to be able to start doing, and what we're learning here is, okay, this symbol contains all these concepts. And this symbol contains all of these symbols, so that eventually we'll just be able to see this one symbol and all of these words will sort of pop into the meaning of what this symbol represents. Okay? That's what we're trying to get to. Of course, we're not there yet, but that's what we're building upon. So as we explore Aries a little further, you know I'm going to throw up a word cloud here because, again, Aries is just another archetype. And this is a great way of demonstrating what we would call an archetypal constellation. Like, these are the qualities that we expect from Aries, right? This is a cardinal fire archetype. And as we start to look, as you start to meditate on what Aries represents and its qualities, you see a lot of fiery qualities coming out, right? It's passionate. It's courageous, right? This is something that all the fire signs possess. Courage, right? Literally, this comes from the word the heart. This is heart-centered, cour, right? Heart, passionate courageousness, right? But it also has, we can see some of the cardinal qualities coming out, right? This sense of initiative, of daring and risk-taking, this energetic, directional, head-first type of energy. Aries rules the head, right? And its symbol is the ram, which is what? It's an animal, the battering ram. It's an animal that literally attacks head first and uses its head in combat, wants to lock horns with its combatant, right? Which is why you often find Aries is often headstrong, right? And you'll often find people with a lot of Aries energy tend to be accident prone, and particularly accidents involving the head. If you see someone with a scar on their head, you can pretty much rest assured they've got some Aries energy in their chart. But this Aries energy is very specific, right? It's fire, it's cardinal fire. It starts, it's initiating. And it's a very certain kind of energy. And, you know, one of the things about Aries, you know, it does have that sort of reputation as being very impulsive, as being aggressive, right? It's ruled by Mars, right? It can be too aggressive. It can be violent at times, right? Its archetype is the warrior, right? It's the perfect sign to exemplify the warrior qualities, right? Fire, cardinal fire. It's aggressive. It's active. It wants to go out there and use its passion and its energy and just get after it, right? Very adventurous. Of course, that can also have some dark sides, some shadow qualities to it. And the thing about what I always like to remember when I'm thinking about Aries and having compassion for Aries, right? Because I think it can get a bit of a bad rep in that way, is that the energy of Aries, the fire of Aries, is kind of unconscious. This is the ultimate act before I think sign, right? That's Aries. It doesn't think first. It acts first and then thinks later because it's really so unconscious. It's so new. It's the first sign of the zodiac. And because it has that cardinal energy, it can't help itself. It only knows itself through doing and experiencing and putting itself out there, right? It's unconscious. It actually has this, there's almost a naive quality, a childlike quality, an infantile quality, not pejoratively, but really in the best way to it, Aries. Like, it's just that newborn, anything new, firsts of anything, firstborn, first try, first effort, you know, new ideas, new initiations. Aries is so good at just creating new experiences. And as we're going to learn in this series, we all have Aries somewhere in our chart. But those of us who might have an Aries sun, an Aries moon, or Aries rising are going to display this Aries quality in a much more intimate way. And I know of what I speak. I have an Aries moon. And as I said, you might be able to see very subtly a scar across my forehead. My Aries moon got me into trouble very early in my life. But, we're starting to get a sense of the quality of Aries here, right? Cardinal fire. And I'm hoping you're starting to sense from this elemental level what this sign represents. And we've got the archetype of the warrior, and its key word, right, is I am. I am. It just exists. It just is. And it's all about isness. It's just being. It's putting its energy out there in the world. And now as we move, and we're going to focus on the next fire sign, Leo, we'll start to see this fire energy shift, right? So there's Aries in a nutshell in terms of our cardinal fire. So if we move on to the next sign in the fire trinity, which is Leo. Okay, what differentiates Leo? Well, Leo is fixed fire, right? In contrast to that Aries energy that was cardinal, was moving out in a direction, Leo takes that fire element and moves it inward, right? Takes it in this centripetal way, right? It's consolidating, it's harnessing the energy. It wants to retain it. It wants to contain it because that makes it more powerful. And remember, we talk about the modalities as being this sort of cycle. So the energy that Aries expressed in that unconscious, naive way in some ways, just putting it out there, Leo then goes, oh, thank you, Aries, very good. We can use that energy. I'm going to harness it. I'm going to contain it. I'm going to fix it in a way that I can become more powerful. And as we're going to demonstrate, we talked about it a little bit, each of the fixed signs of each of the elemental group will tend to be the most powerful of that trio. And I would argue that Leo is the most powerful of the three fire signs because it is fixed, because it is containing its power, right? And I talk about how if Aries is a flamethrower in terms of its metaphor for fire, Leo is an internal combustion engine. It's taking that fire energy and containing it inside of an engine so that we can create horsepower. Leo's about horsepower. It's about power in general, as we're going to learn. So Leo is fixed, and it shares these qualities of fire with Aries and with Sagittarius, as we're going to see. And of course, all the fire signs are all going to be yang. They're all going to be masculine, active, projective, right? It's that centrifugal force. But interesting what you get with the quality of being masculine with the quality of being fixed. And you'll find this with both the masculine fixed signs, that there's this push-pull a little bit, because while the fixed energy wants to be centripetal and contain, that yang energy wants to be centrifugal and push out, which creates a certain kind of tension that both Leo have and I would argue Aquarius have, because Aquarius is the other sign that is both fixed and masculine as the fixed air sign, as we'll learn in a couple episodes when we look at the air trinity. But again, we're starting to distinguish Leo from Aries, show how it's the same, but it's different in that way that it's harnessing the power in its fixed mode. So we move on and take a look at our constellation of qualities that we can associate with Leo, our fixed fire sign. And again, one of the key words I would associate with Leo is I will, willpower, right? Where Aries was I am, Leo says, I will do this. And if you consider the fact that the sun is the ruling planet of Leo, which is the most important, body in our solar system, the provider of all life, it's center stage. We all evolve around the sun. Appropriate that would be the ruling planet of Leo, because Leo really is about that power of the sun. It has that fire quality, and it has this fixed quality of power. So as we start to see all these characteristics, again, we see a lot of the fire qualities, the warmth and the vitality and the expressiveness, but it also, we can see what the fixed nature is doing by taking that power and containing it, right? It's this sense of leadership, right? This sense of strong-willedness, domineering in a way, this regal quality, because the archetype of Leo is the king, the ruler. That's what we associate with the sign of Leo, is rulership, is authority, right? Now it also has we can see some shadow qualities that will emerge from the Leo archetype. Leo is known to can be selfish, a little pompous, domineering, conceited, right? And these are qualities that you're going to get with Leo. And again, in the same way when we talk about Aries being unconscious fire, right? Well, Leo is much more conscious about the fire energy. It's much more self-aware. It's really learning to discover itself through that self-awareness and through that process of creative self-expression. Leo is all about creating. It's one of the most creative of all of the signs of the zodiac, because it's taking that fire, it's working with it, and it's working through it, and it's just constantly discovering itself, why it's sometimes selfish, but it can be selfish in the best possible way, focused on the self-aware, right? It can also be negative, right? Taking that Leo energy down the wrong path can lead to that selfishness, that pompous arrogance that you sometimes get with Leo. But in its best manifestation, Leo really is this really selfish, self-aware, self-expressing type of energy. And we talk about how it's fixing the Aries cardinal fire, right? And consider the metaphor of each of these archetypes that these two signs represent. Where Aries is the warrior, Leo is the king or the ruler. And if you think about it, the king, the ruler, the president, the commander-in-chief, Leo, always rules over the army of warriors, of soldiers. And that makes perfect sense if we start to see this metaphor of the triad of these signs, right? So what is initiated with Aries, that's sort of unconscious, that's a little more youthful, well, Leo tends to fix that power and say, oh, I'm going to put that to good use. So it's a really interesting way of looking at this relationship between these two fire signs. And we can go back and start to look at that in terms of seeing them as this continuum of energy, that this Aries energy can move into Leo in a way, that what gets initiated with the cardinal fire can become fixed and contained in the fixed fire. So we're starting to see a pattern emerge here with our fire signs, and this leads us into our third of the Trinity, which is Sagittarius. So now we're taking the fire element and expressing it in this different vibrational pattern, this different mode. Sag is mutable fire, spiral, harmonizing, sharing, relating, right? That mutable energy wants to propagate, to distribute, to evolve the fire element. So again, always going to have fire qualities. It's going to do so in that inspirational, enthusiastic, intuitive way. And it's going to have that yang, masculine, active, projective quality that all fire possesses. But it's doing it through its unique mutability, right? And again, all these qualities and characteristics are contained in these symbols. And all of these symbols are contained in the one notion of Sagittarius. So let's explore Sagittarius as a constellation of qualities. Now we have the mutable fire. And again, all of the fire nature is still within Sagittarius. Enthusiasm, right? And adventurousness, that exuberance, right? All three of these signs are forged in fire, literally. But each of them is expressing that fire in its own vibrational pattern. And Sagittarius it wants to mutate the energy. So what was initiated with Aries and gets fixed in Leo, Sag says, okay, thanks Leo, good job at really harnessing that power and taking it all in. Now I'm going to mutate it. I'm going to distribute that firepower And I want to see if we can evolve it. Can we improve it? Can we change it? Can we share it in a way that it can become the fertile ground for the next cycle to begin? And then it will get mutated back into Aries fire, and the cycle will start all over again. Of course, the word I understand, this is the key word for Sagittarius. It seeks to really understand. It has this philosophical quality, right? It's ruled by Jupiter, which has this expansive, jovial, philosophical, worldly quality. Like Sagittarius is taking fire as an element, which is enthusiasm, which is spirituality, which is intuition. And it wants to mutate it. It wants to grow it. It wants to share it. And that really relates to the idea of knowledge, the idea of wisdom, right? And again, when we think about the Sagittarius archetype in its best possible manifestation, it really is wisdom. It's the wise philosopher of the zodiac. And if we think about it in that sort of the sage, if you will, right? The mentor. And now we can take this triad of energy. If we take the warrior archetype of Aries that gets controlled and ruled over by the king, which is Leo. Well, when the king reaches a Rubicon or a tough situation, who does the king turn to? Well, he turns to his sagely advisors, the wisdom keeper, for advice. Sagittarius, mutable fire. So we can see how even the archetypes of these three signs have this pattern of connection between the cardinal, the fixed, and the mutable, which I think is a really interesting way of approaching an understanding of these three signs, this fire trinity. So Sagittarius at its best expression is always going to have that generosity, that sense of, let's take this fire, this inspiration, this enthusiasm, this wisdom, and let's share it. Let's propagate it, which is why Sagittarius is often the sort of evangelical zeal and zest for sharing philosophy, right? It can become a little pedagogical in its ways. That could be a shadow side. It can become a little preachy, right? You can find a lot of Sagittarians up on their soapboxes saying, I know the truth and this is the only truth and you have to listen to me. You know, that Sagittarius just trying to just exuberantly express that fire, that passion, that enthusiasm and share it and mutate it. But it can get, a little preachy at times. So let's be patient with our Sagittarians. And again, I'm Sag rising, so I have 2 fire signs of my 3 triad, if you will, sun, moon, rising. So it's part of why I'm doing what I do. I want to share enthusiastically in a very Sagittarius type of way my enthusiasm for astrology. So you will often find people who have this really passionate, exuberant faith in their philosophical, cosmological, spiritual, religious practices. And so that's what we get with Sagittarius. So now we've gotten this really interesting connection between all 3 of the fire signs, right? We have Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. I am, I will, I understand. Cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And collectively, these 3 signs are always going to be the most passionate, the most fiery signs of the zodiac. And so anytime you have a planet, like in your natal chart, that is in one of these 3 fire signs, this is going to give you that really passionate, enthusiastic nature. And if you have many planets in fiery signs, well, the entire personality is going to really display these fiery qualities. So there we have it. We've explored the fire trinity. And now this, it's not an exhaustive exploration of each of these signs. There's a lot we can unpack and explore. And I think in future episodes, we'll probably break down the signs. And there'll be an episode on each sign individually, because while it is super helpful, I think, to look at these in terms of these trinities, these 3 groups of elemental signs, because it's in keeping with what we're trying to build as our elemental foundation. There's also something about considering the signs in their progress around the wheel from the 1st to the 12th sign. There are other more interesting values that are encoded in this sort of developmental model that we'll look at in future episodes. But for now, I think it's good for us to take this elemental approach. I've been preaching that since the first episode, and I think you're seeing it paying dividends here. Now that we can see we're using our toolkit of our elements, our modalities, and our polarities to start to see the qualities of these signs emerge in a way that maybe you hadn't seen before. And this is going to really help us get a real intuitive facility with the entire wheel of the zodiac. So in the next episode, we'll move on and we'll explore the Earth Trinity. We'll be looking at the signs of Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo in the same way that we explored these fire signs, and we'll get a sense of what is Earth? What does Earth represent? And then how is that Earth element expressed in 3 different ways with the 3 different Earth signs of the zodiac. So hope you'll join me for that. Again, as always, if this information is helpful, if you're enjoying this series, please, click that like or subscribe button, and also the notification bell as well, so that you'll know when the next episodes in this series I upload and publish. All right. It's been great sharing this information with you. Thanks for spending this time with me. I appreciate and value your time and your interest and your enthusiasm, your fiery nature for learning this incredible art and science of astrology. And, hopefully we're learning to become the architects of our own destiny because we understand the blueprint of our soul. All right. Till next time. We'll see you then. Sat Nam, everyone.